G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Today we're going to be going over a little bit of a first impressions on the PM1, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Someone can give me a hand with that in the comments, or maybe I can just Google Translate it, see how it pans out. But this particular plane is perhaps one of the strongest aircraft that I've ever seen introduced to a new tech tree ever. This rivals the G55S. The PM1, a plane at 4.3, rivals the G55S. It's an amazing plane, and honestly, I can see it going up in battle rating. Normally, it's pretty typical of new planes to go through a little phase where they're being tested and where they're being addressed and all the battle ratings are adjusted and whatnot. But in this case, we're still in that process. We're still a couple weeks out from patch day, and so it's going to be difficult to immediately balance something like this without the correct data. Now, I'm a decent pilot, and I love planes like the G55S. I can normally do quite well. I can normally, maintain a roughly 5-to-1 kill-death ratio. But this particular plane seems to be in another league. It just seems to be so strong. And I don't quite know what to put. I don't quite know how to define it. The plane climbs well. Essentially, it is a BF-109, maybe a G55S, somewhere in between in terms of speed and energy retention. But it is light. It is so lightweight. It only has one cannon and 2 MGs, which are Browning M2s, by the way, with the early war belts. So it's not quite, an amazing plane. It doesn't have 3 MG151s. It does have those 50 cals though. And 2 50 cals with the right ammunition are extremely powerful. I think they're called LKK 42s. They are really, really powerful on this plane. It's something about it. Combine them with an MG151 and you literally have the 3 best cannons or machine gun cannon combination that you can possibly have with props. The best 20mm and the best 50 caliber round. It's amazing. It is truly, truly amazing to have a plane that wields both of these on such a light airframe. It doesn't weigh much, and I believe part of it is wooden as well. Granted, it's not terribly durable, and it doesn't really reach amazingly high speeds like the other planes do. It's sort of comparable to a Spitfire, and more so than the G55S. The G55S is somewhat on the line of the Mark 9, and I would say that this is just a little bit lighter, but I don't quite know where to put it just yet. Granted, I haven't flown a terrible amount of matches, so this is more of a first impression than an actual full blown out review. But I would like to say this. The PM1 is certainly not pay to win. It's certainly not invincible, but it is very strong, and I could definitely see it going to 4.7. Let's get that clear, and let's make that a little bit well known. This plane is light, and it climbs well. This is why it is a strong plane. It has a powerful engine, which is, I believe, equivalent to the BF-109G, I can't quite remember, or the F, although the nose does look suspiciously like a BF-109F. I really like it. It's got a lot of good characteristics about it, and we're just about to get into a battle to see exactly how it, performs. What I like to do in this plane, so far in the few battles that I have played it, is go for a climb, and get to about 6,000 meters, because you will actually see 6,000 meters in this plane. It climbs better than better than most planes, in fact, at its tier. It can climb so much so that if you're good enough and if you watch your climb speed, you can in fact get above or to a level or to an altitude where you can engage 264s. Now, in this case here, I was shot at by a teammate and had to take a couple of evasive measures. But otherwise, I would have been able to kill that 264 early on in the game. That is incredible. I honestly think that this plane could very, very comfortably sit at 4.7 Although I'm not quite sure how it would face against TAR 152s and the likes of the K4. I don't quite know, but I do think there is something that is worth noting in this plane. It is very maneuverable and it climbs very well, kind of like the G55, but not so much with the armament. Anyway, let's get into the battle. I'm coming up against an A6M5, and now the A6M5 is, not quite sure. He's just going into a turn, he's put himself in front of my guns, but then he's gone and done a little dive. Now, I'm not going to continue on, I'm not going to tunnel vision on the one plane, and this A6M comes in as well, but he evades my shots, or he doesn't pull the head on, he doesn't go for the head on. And so immediately when I realize that, I can keep going in a straight line. Otherwise, I would have pulled straight off. You do not commit to head-ons at all in this plane. It just does not have the forward-facing armament to deal with that. Sure, it's got a 151, but you just don't bother with the chances unless you're a little bit desperate or unless you're, feeling frisky. But it's not really a situation that you're going to want to take. What you are going to want to do is use your boom and zoom maneuvers against zeros, because the zero, whilst we'll see later on exactly how I go in a dogfight against a zero, you don't want to be getting yourself into a dogfight against a zero in any plane, even in some cases biplanes, because the zero is it has some very, very great stall characteristics, so much so that it can put itself right in front of that Yak 9's guns and just perfectly paint it there in a nice still picture. Isn't it lovely? Baiting for your team is something that you can always do in the PM1, and it is something that you will keep in mind. G55S, the plane that I've been likening this plane to, comes in towards me, and I'm going to, pull that little last minute evade, so it makes him think that I'm AFK, and it forces him into a dogfight with me. Now, I almost fly in front of his guns here, and I just skim below them. I could have just died right there and then, but he decides instead of committing to me to try and go for that other plane there, and he gets set on fire. That's not going out. Whatever you might think, that ain't going out, Chief. I hit his engine and I hit his fuel tanks as well. By the looks of it, he's not going anywhere so fast. And this zero, I don't know where he's going, but it's certainly back to the hangar. Well, maybe not with my aim. I do get a crit though, and that's probably down to the 50 caliber machine guns. And I think I might have hit his engine there. So he does bail, and yes, he is going back to the hangar. So, I have pretty much just won dogfights against some of the best dogfighting planes in the game. And I've also managed to sort of bait things for my team as well. This plane is quite fun to play, honestly. And pilot snipes for days. I'm using air targets, and I'm using, I believe, universal on the 50 cals. Air targets, of course, for the 20mm MG151, because if you don't use air targets or stealth, then honestly, you're a bit of a muppet sometimes. But it's a very, very strong plane. I've just managed to win a dogfight against zeros who, whilst they may not have been looking straight for me, I've certainly been looking for them, and I've put myself in a position because of the good energy retention and the good climb rate. These two things make for a really, really strong plane. And this is the thing that is the real gem with the PM1. It just seems to be easy to fly. It's not necessarily amazing, but it certainly is easy to fly, which makes it very, very relaxing. And honestly, one of the planes that it, in my opinion, makes the perfect grinder. If you play anything like the G55S or the 288 or anything that is strong, but not perhaps overpowered, well, maybe the 288 you could call overpowered. I reckon it could be at 6.0. That would be fine. But for the most part, if you take a fighter that is stressful to play, on the flip side, like the Narval or like something else, I mean, the Narval is good, but it isn't easy to fly. You have to be very well disciplined. This plane, you can sort of just go in, have a bit of fun, get a couple of kills, and you'll be right. And that's what I like about it. I just like its ability to put an A7M in the dirt like that. I don't know how that possibly happens, but, more power to you, I guess. If you're going to put yourself in the dirt and leave me with a man advantage, then, be my guest, I guess. I would have liked to have shot him down, but, that's one less. So, regardless, there are 3 or 4 enemies left on the entire enemy team. And most of them are there on the airfield. Now, I mentioned in the Tunnan video, which J29D, which is apparently properly pronounced Tunnan, or Tunnan, or something like that. It's not really great to be strafing airfields, and all 3 of those guys end up perishing. And it's just me left against 3 enemy planes. So, we're about to get into some dogfights, some actual proper dogfights with the PM1, and it's going to be great. I was always excited to get into dogfights in this plane, and it's just never really terribly materialized. Of course, you might be thinking, well, what was that you just had? And it's not quite a dogfight. It's more an energy fight and sort of baiting and stuff like that. But a proper, one-on-one dogfight with planes that I may not have faced in one-on-one dogfights before in this one. Honestly, the way I'm playing this plane, it's relaxing and it's good. I could see it going to 4-7, and I don't think it would have problems with any of its current opponents at 4-7. Obviously, it would, lift it a little bit from the 3-3 matchmaker, but it's mostly fine, to be honest. The Key 61 now, returning to the battle, is starting to dive on me, and I'm going to give him the impression that I'm AFK, because that is the time where the enemy gets the most complacent. I'm going to wait for him just to sort of close that distance, and now that he's starting to commit, and he can see that he's got a lot more energy than me, I'm going to just gun it down a little bit, put the nose down a tiny, tiny bit, and start to do some gentle rolls to try and get him to, commit to a turn. I'm going to do some gentle stuff to start off, because he's less likely to spend his precious energy on a turn if he's going, if the turn's small. But then I commit to a nice big turn, and there it is. Nice big sort of semi-vertical turn, and I'm going to roll it over to keep him turning. I want him to keep turning, keep committing, keep bleeding that energy, and there he goes. He's taken the bait. Now what I'm able to do is, with a little bit of rudder, kick over the plane, and now I'm in an advantageous situation against him. I've picked up enough speed in the dive, and I haven't let go of the throttle at all, and as he rolls over, I managed to put a beautiful shot into the whole fuselage, and he just goes boom. That's those guns working. It is a fantastic plane to fly, and it is a fantastic plane to dogfight. In the 3 or 4 matches that I've played this thing, I've managed to get a total of, I think, almost 20 kills. I love it. No one expects how this thing would fly. They think, well, it's probably just a BF-109, because that's what they said. It was, likened to the BF-109. But I believe some of the construction design is wooden, and so you have a much lighter airframe, kind of like a Zero almost. It just feels very floaty and responsive. But at the same time, it also feels fast enough that you're not stuck with that sort of feeling of being outrun every single time like you are in your G55S in a full up tier. You feel like you can do something, and it's really, really nice, and it's kind of addictive, to be honest. Now, I can see this BF-109 here, and the one thing the BF-109 is going to want to do against me is get a little bit of speed. Now, if he has speed, and obviously he has the potential for guns over me with the gun pods if he's equipping them. But I also have the altitude advantage. It doesn't look like he's been climbing a lot, and he seems to be sort of just gunning it to around my altitude. Maybe he's going for ground targets. You never know. I'm going to dive towards him, but I'm not going to get to his altitude. I'm going to stay a little bit above it if I can. And assuming that he travels in a straight line or keeps climbing, then I'm going to stay just a little bit above him. So in the case that he does pitch up, I have a little bit of time and a little bit of energy to pitch up and hopefully avoid what he's going to shoot at me. But instead, he wastes his energy and he goes straight for a dive. If he had climbed instead, I think he would have had me here. And the BF-109, being a fast aircraft, maybe not as fast as the VM1 in a dive, or the PM1 rather, it's not quite the same, and I'm just able to catch up to him. I've just caught up to this guy, and now he's going to put himself into a left-hand turn, and it doesn't look like it's going to end quite well for him. You can see he's struggling a little bit, and the guns absolutely work perfectly here. There's no real time to waste on that, though, because I've bled my energy in a turn as well, and I've only got 450 kilometers per hour of airspeed and a couple hundred meters of altitude, so I've got to take it careful against a zero, of all things. And you can see he knows where I am, and he's coming straight for me. I'm in a bit of trouble here. So what I'm going to do is, whilst I'm bleeding more energy, I'm going to get underneath him, directly underneath, to make it as hard as possible for him to come down. And if he does come down, he's going to come in with a lot of speed, and hopefully he's going to overshoot. So I'm going to try that again. I'm going to try a turn, and he's going to come in nice and quick. I'm going to put it into a small dive because I've gotten a little bit of altitude, and then I'm going to turn out of him. Hopefully he turns in towards me, and then I'm able to dodge that next shot, which you can see coming up right here. It looks like he's put himself into a vertical, and maybe I can get some shots. Not quite. If he had gone into the vertical here, I would have died. But he puts himself into a dive, and he travels in a straight line, which means it gives me time to turn around towards him and perhaps get some shots off. I'm getting some very frisky maneuvers. I'm getting desperate here. I'm thinking, shit, I'm going to lose this. So I chuck my landing flaps on. I go for a quick sort of semi-reversal thing, and I try and pull in. And that's the problem with the Zero. He just turned too much instead of turning, I guess, not enough. And you can see he's burning there. And he'll eventually put that fire out because he's Japanese and very honorable. But it's not going to last for too long, because now I have a serious advantage against him. I have speed, and I have an undamaged plane. The Zero without altitude, without energy, and most importantly without speed is pretty much useless. Obviously the Zero gets that back pretty quick. But at the same time, if you've got no engine or no wings and your plane's burnt out like that, you're not producing as much lift, you're not getting the acceleration from the engine because perhaps the oil is empty and the engine's now frying, you're at a bit of a struggle here. I'm going to put myself up into a vertical, and this Zero is probably going to commit to me. That's what I would do anyway. And sure enough, he does. I'm not taking any of that whatsoever, and I can still just sort of pitch up and laze around like this. I would not have been able to do this if he wasn't damaged. Now that he is, though, he's sitting. He's an absolute sitting duck. There's nothing that he can do. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I've just won a dogfight with the dogfighting plane. I beat a Zero in a dogfight. Should I title this video "The Plane That Can Outturn Zeros"? Maybe. I probably won't do that, but it'll be a good joke based on the P59 video, which, by the way, you should totally watch. But jokes aside, 3 versus 1 clutch in the plane that has pleasantly surprised me. I've played it for literally one afternoon, and I'm very, very impressed so far with how the plane handles and with how the plane performs. If you're just looking for a quick first impressions, it's a very strong one. I'm going to try and play some more games and get some more information and sort of work things out a bit more. See if it is actually as overpowered as I think it might be. But for now, that'll do it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.